Welcome, 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 colleagues, friends, to this combination town hall meeting and informal workshop, a milestone in the birth of a new discipline, a new kind of scientifically powered, integrative archaeology and transdisciplinary history. Together, we're experimenting here in this exciting new research collaboration between Germany's scientific powerhouse of the Max Planck Society and the Initiative for the Science of the Human Past here at Harvard. As you know, with the support of President Faust, Dean Smith, Provost Garber, the initiative is partnering with the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History at Jena to create a new transatlantic research center, program, idea, initiative. The variously pronounced MHAAM or MHAAM or MHAAM, the Max Planck-Harvard Research Center for the Archaeoscience of the Ancient Mediterranean. So I'm welcoming you on behalf of MHAAM, I'll try and alternate pronunciations, equal time, MHAAM in my capacity as co-director in Cambridge, and on behalf of my co-director of MHAAM in Jena, my colleague and friend Johannes Krause, founding director of the new MPI. As we begin, for some of us as we continue this day of discovery, I want, on behalf of all my colleagues, to start by thanking the institutions that are making today and the future possible. I want to thank in particular those who have underwritten and mentally and materially supported this daring enterprise, the Institute for Aegean Prehistory, our own Faculty of Arts and Sciences, the Max Planck Institute in Jena, as well as the indefatigable efforts of our amazing coordinator, Lisa Ransom-Lubar, who has worked tirelessly and efficiently to coordinate this event of 3 days and 2 continents with signal success. Our research program targets 2 big problems in Mediterranean history, which are now being revolutionized by the advanced scientific methods and technologies that we've been talking about and will be talking about. The problem of ancient migrations and ancient pathogens. We're gathered here to ask scholarly questions, to share ideas, and to think together about what kind of new and what kind of old approaches can illuminate the movements, the encounters of cultures, of organisms, of objects in the Eastern Mediterranean from at least the Neolithic onward. The schedule for this afternoon has lots of time for talking. It's all about talking. While MHAAM will pursue highly focused research programs, we would also like to think of it as a kind of research venue, a kind of platform in which people who might not otherwise meet can meet and talk. A place of encounter, a place of stimulus and conversation, a place for a new transatlantic, virtual, but very active community of discovery. MHAAM will develop programs, workshops, and exchanges which will weave together the human and the institutional and the intellectual components of our 2 institutions, alternating between here and Germany. Many of them will be unprecedented on these shores, like the Young Investigator Symposium that we organized in October, inspired by our German colleagues' example, for undergraduates and master's archaeoscientists that was held in Cambridge and in Jena last fall, and that we aim to repeat next fall. Also unprecedented is a wonderful new transatlantic Max Planck and Initiative partnership in the funding of full graduate fellowships in the new discipline of the science of the human past at Harvard. Starting this fall, we expect to enroll the first 2 wonderful graduate students, both of whom have joined us at this meeting. Today's workshop will continue with a few words of welcome from Mark Elliott, the Vice Provost for International Affairs. The accomplished Aegeanist, alumnus, and friend of our university, Dr. Malcolm Wiener, will speak briefly about the tasks ahead for our meeting and for our daring new venture in general. A panel chaired by my fellow Initiative Steering Committee member, Professor Jason of Anthropology, will then lay out some of the archaeological questions for us to think about this afternoon and in coming days, weeks, and months. A panel chaired by my fellow Initiative Steering Committee member, Clay Professor of Scientific Archaeology, Noreen Touros, will lay out then perspectives opened by archaeogenetics and ancient DNA in this set of fascinating questions. Each talk will allow a few minutes, a few questions immediately after the talk, and then we'll have a half hour of general discussion, which will conclude each panel so that everyone present can share their ideas, their insights, their questions on all aspects of the broader research themes that we will be addressing and how we can best tackle them, not to be confined to the particular disciplines that we're highlighting this afternoon. How can we use the whole toolkit of 21st century archaeology, history, philology, and science to address these great questions of ancient migrations, ancient pathogens, and the encounters of civilizations? We expect and hope that these conversations will spill over into the coffee break and the reception. The very best part, I hope, will come at the end, that we'd like to invite you for one final set of completely open discussion in which we hope that everyone on the floor, from the most junior to the most senior, will have their contribution to make about other questions, other methods that could serve us, and comparative examples, whether they come from colonial America, from 20th century Europe, from the Bronze Age, from the late antique period, from ancient China, and so forth. Many of us, perhaps most of us, make no special claim to particular expertise in Bronze Age archaeology or in ancient DNA. We need make no apology for that. I certainly won't. We are here to share unexpected perspectives, ideas seemingly crazy or shrewd, insights that can help invent a new way of thinking, of tackling one of the great historical phases in the development of the Mediterranean and indeed of global civilization. I believe that early tin was coming from Afghanistan and gold was coming from Nubia. A warning to speakers and audiences alike: the talking, despite our best efforts, may get fairly technical. Don't be afraid to say, hey, what? What does that mean? Ask for clarification of some term or concept that sounds unfamiliar. We are, many of us, speaking across into a new discipline for the first time, and there's going to be a lot of things that will be unclear to each of us in various disciplines. Have no fear. Lots of people feel the same way. Get your hand up and ask. Don't wait for someone to answer. Just get that question out there. We want everyone to be able to follow what's going on here. We must be open. We must be critical, but we must remain collegial as we start to confront and integrate new results with the hard-won previous knowledge from archaeology, from linguistics, from philology. Because our ultimate goal is not to produce elegantly reconstructed genomes or elegantly reconstructed linguistic trees of affiliation. We want to use ancient genomes. We want to use ancient languages. We want to use ancient isotopes, ceramics, and shipwrecks to recover, to understand, to explain, to write the history of this period in a new way with new data, to discover the salient traits of the human past and clarify their deep interconnectedness, their patterns of change and continuity, to unravel and explain chains of causes and consequence. My own research has shown me very powerfully the capacity of comparison with other, better understood archaeological and historical phenomena that present analogies with those that we're studying today. Comparison must deploy the full range of disciplines that illuminate those phenomena of the past and present. History, of course, but also economics and sociology and linguistics, anthropology, among others. Sociohistorical views of internal United States migration in the 19th or 20th century, of course, prove nothing about the Bronze Age, but they may suggest where some interesting questions and perhaps even answers or interpretations might be sought. I hope you will all feel emboldened to ask questions of us all, to use your own particular expertise, whether it's in Chaco Canyon, or colonial tidewater. It's in Indo-European linguistics or radiocarbon dating. If it's in light stable isotopes or paleo-environmental archives, you will have something to contribute to the conversation that is starting now. Don't hesitate. We welcome that. By way of conclusion, I want to spotlight 3 sets of questions for our agenda. They can supply some new data alongside what may emerge from human genetics, isotopes, and more traditional archaeological investigations. And they are non-human migrations, philology and linguistics, and paleoclimate science. First of all, non-human migrations. Humans do not travel alone. We can sharpen human migration patterns emerging from ancient human DNA by comparing them with the genetics of organisms that traveled with them. Ancient and modern mouse DNA has tracked the Viking migration into Ireland, the settlement of Iceland and Greenland, and now most recently, the likelihood that some really, really lost Viking ship wound up in the Canary Islands. Genetic analysis has illuminated the spread of the house mouse, Mus domesticus, in the Mediterranean, clearly now seen as a 2-step development. The first, a longer and slower process throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, along with the Neolithic package, and second, only much later, in the 1st millennium BC, and almost overnight in the Western Mediterranean, presumably accompanying Phoenician and Greek Mediterranean diasporas. Now, the traces of such encounters persist beyond the organisms or the objects themselves. When we learned from the Japanese to eat raw fish, we adopted not only a new foodway, but a new Japanese word for the new food, sushi, which of course does not mean raw fish. So too, ancient Greek speakers treasured the mysterious clear stone that burned, Bernstein, that, as Thales of Miletus noted around 600 BC, produced sparks when rubbed. The Greeks gave amber a non-Greek name, electron. Where does that word come from? Is it from some ancient Baltic tongue, or from some language spoken by intermediaries who brought the magical material to the Greeks and other Mediterranean people? Perhaps someone here will know the answer to that question. Colin Renfrew noted the startling number of non-Greek words that were central to the daily life of Greek speakers in the Bronze Age, suggesting, Colin did, that they might be Minoan. Others here will be more competent than I to judge that. More important to me, the mere fact that in Greek, the words for cereal grains, for olive oil, for wine, the words for the Neolithic package itself of farming and stock raising, not to mention house mouse and donkey, all these are foreign words, non-Greek words, and to some extent at least, non-Indo-European. This seems to me extremely interesting. From what languages might they come? Do we have here linguistic tracks of where, when, whose encounters precipitated the appropriation of the Neolithic package by the very ancient Greeks? The same holds for the next periods. Given the non-Greek words for metals like tin, lead, bronze, iron, not to mention the Greek chrysos, gold, which looks clearly to be Semitic, as my friend Peter Machinist clearly confirmed for me yesterday. Note, however, that argyros, the silver so abundant in the Aegean, does have a distinctively Indo-European and indeed Greek name. If genes, isotopes, and words can help track movements, can environmental conditions help explain them? We now know that environments change, that paleoclimate science is beginning to unlock those changes. Just a few months ago, Peter Domenical trenchantly formulated the latest implications of climate modeling for the original pulsed emigrations out of Africa in the late Pleistocene. In the Mediterranean, aridification and cooling were powerful shocks capable of fueling human stress, innovation, and migrations. Specialists are acutely aware that the younger Dryas, an 1100-year return to glacial conditions, seems to coincide with the Natufians return to residential mobility, to island extinctions and the massive stone monuments of Göbekli Tepe, and all before agriculture. Other big aridification events hit the Mediterranean around 6200 BC and around 2200 BC, not to mention the desiccation of the Sahara from about 5000 to 3000 BC, whether it was fast or slow. Connections have been drawn from between these big climate changes and major movements of humans. For instance, in this beautiful graph of Cooper and Köppelin, from the Sahara into the Nile Valley. Herodotus himself repeatedly connects food disasters with migration. And these are only the biggest changes. There will have been countless other ones on smaller temporal, environmental, or spatial scales that yet sufficed to make the kind of impact that volcanic winters probably had on European civilization in the recently defined late antique Little Ice Age. Thus, in addition to the immediate destruction, the Thera explosion must have caused at least a few years of volcanic winter that struck overnight. Of course, rigorous chronology will be indispensable to demonstrating cause and effect, and we are not there yet, especially in the Mediterranean, where paleoclimate science is really in its infancy. Nevertheless, we will get there, perhaps aided by the science of the human past's own historical ice core, which may illuminate Mediterranean climate and possibly can provide high-resolution measurements back into the Bronze Age. In any case, recent efforts suggest that there is much to be gained by experimenting with reorganizing our periodization of ancient Mediterranean civilization in terms of changing major climate regimes. For our time and place, Cyprian Broodbank, presently underway to join us, has led the way by implicitly reorganizing our very diverse artifactual typochronologies in terms of broad climate shifts. There are many other points yet to be made to spark our collective thinking toward new ideas and approaches to these ancient questions. For instance, the role that spatial analysis, GIS, can play in organizing and integrating our new and our old evidence, and how it can help us to understand its implications over time and over space. But I'll save these for the discussions to come this afternoon. If I've whetted your appetite, if I've provoked you, so much the better. Now let me turn the floor over to my friend and colleague, the Schwartz Professor of Chinese and Inter-Asian History and Harvard University Vice Provost for International Affairs, Professor Mark Elliott. Mark.
So good afternoon and welcome. I want to thank Michael for including me in today's event. As Michael noted, I'm Vice Provost for International Affairs, which is a position at the center of the university that has coverage of all the schools of Harvard. But I am also a faculty member, and Michael and I, in fact, are colleagues in the history department. I'm a historian of China. Let me put my Vice Provost's hat on, though, first, and to extend to you, on behalf of President Drew Faust and Provost Alan Garber, a very warm welcome to Cambridge, and it will, in fact, be getting warmer tomorrow and Sunday, happy to say. And to offer also sincere congratulations to everybody associated with the creation of this new center, the Max Planck-Harvard Research Center for the Archaeoscience of the Ancient Mediterranean. And I have to ask, what happened to the P in Planck in the acronym? MFAM? MFAM. That would be very emphatically an improvement, in my opinion. Sorry. So, particular congratulations to Michael McCormick, Francis Gillette Professor of Medieval History and Director of the Initiative for the Science of the Human Past at Harvard, and to Johannes Krause of the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Jena, where he is head of the Department of Archaeogenetics, a word that I had to add to the vocabulary of my computer because it was highlighted as something that was misspelled. Same for archaeoscience. So these are new words in our vocabulary. Their partnership is the principal explanation for why we all find ourselves here today in this space. Let me also note, however, the important contributions of different research groups at Harvard, including those led by David Reif, professor of genetics at the Harvard Medical School, and by Nick Patterson, a senior computational biologist at the Broad Institute in the Medical and Population Genetics program there, and also this year a fellow at the Radcliffe Institute. And I must also acknowledge here the thoughtful guidance provided by Professor Malcolm Weiner, Harvard class of 1957, known to everyone as the president and founder of the Institute for Aegean Prehistory and chairman of the Board of Trustees of the American School of Classical Studies in Athens. Taken together, this is really an extraordinary group of people, and it has been a privilege for my office to work together to help to finalize the agreement, the Memorandum of Understanding that was formally created the center and that will bring the new center into being. So congratulations to everyone involved. Now, why is this center important? Well, we've already heard from Michael some of the reasons why the research here will matter so much. The contributions that it will make to the field. I'm, as I said, a historian. I'm not a historian of the ancient world, but it's not hard for me to see how the different methods that are being talked about here, the recombination clock and ice core samples and a whole variety of things are going to revolutionize what we know and also how we learn new things about the ancient past. Both in the Mediterranean and in other parts of Eurasia. In fact, I watched one of Professor Krause's videos on the computer. I think this was a lecture at UC San Diego, and discovered some important connections between the steppe and the formation of the modern European genome. So maybe at some point there'll be a little space for me in this, because I do teach on the ancient connections between China and its nomadic neighbors here at Harvard. But I'm going to leave the comments on the academic contributions here to people who are true Holocenists, if that's a term, and say instead of just a few things about the importance of this center to Harvard broadly. So first, we talk a lot at Harvard about interdisciplinarity. And there's nothing particularly unusual about talking about interdisciplinarity. This has been going around for quite a long time. Except that at Harvard, the obstacles to interdisciplinarity are, I would say, often more substantial than they are at other institutions because of our well-known penchant here for decentralized organization and the independence of every school and every dean, with, in many cases, pretty high walls between even departments in the same school, not to mention between one school and another. So I really can't, to those of you who are not from Harvard, I can't emphasize to you enough how unusual it is for collaborations to be struck up between historians and geneticists and biologists. I may be missing some, but I can't think of very many other examples of this, or of very many collaborations at all between the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, where the Department of History is, and the Harvard Medical School, or the Broad Institute. In fact, I would say that few historians here even know where the medical school is located. I didn't know until I became vice provost. And I doubt that few of our colleagues know to say the Broad Institute and not the Broad Institute. Likewise, I don't think that very many of our colleagues at HMS could find their way to Robinson Hall or this room without a lot of help. So the example set here by the center, if not unprecedented, is certainly pioneering. And I think shows the promise of new types of partnerships and interdisciplinarity beyond the usual sort of interdisciplinarity, which if we get an anthropologist and a historian in the same room, we clap our hands and we just congratulate ourselves on how terrific that is. This goes well beyond that, and I think that's really something to be excited about, the kind of out-of-the-box thinking that's going to emerge, that is already emerging from the kind of work that Michael has been doing. I think this is the hallmark of truly original scholarship and the prerequisite for new discoveries, such as the one that I was reading about just a couple of weeks ago about how friendly Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were, which I wasn't aware of. In fact, there was an article in the New York Times protesting against how the Neanderthals had been done so much disservice over the years. So that's a point of view I think we hadn't seen before and wouldn't have seen if not for this kind of work. We talk a lot at Harvard also about digital, about big data, about genetics. We have a lot of people working in different areas here, and about the possibilities that these sorts of new areas make available to scholarship across the whole university. And I think that the work that will be done at the new research center will show just how that can be made to work. And here I want to just emphasize that the inclusion of graduate students as part of this whole package, as part of the agreement, is so crucial because while for us, and at least for myself, speaking for myself, this is all pretty new stuff, it will seem like old hat to our graduate students in a few years. They will grow up thinking that in their careers, thinking that this is perfectly normal and this is the way that work ought to happen. And that's good. So that's a second thing. Third, we talk a lot at Harvard about international collaboration. I certainly talk a lot about that. That's one of the main parts of my job as vice provost. Especially these days, it seems, to making the case for the free movement of people back and forth across national borders suddenly attracted much more attention, and the case has to be made much more forcefully than I think any of us, certainly I, ever thought would need to be the case. But I'm happy to make the case that collaboration between scholars in different parts of the world is required for breakthroughs in pretty much any field of inquiry you want to think about today. The platform that will be provided by MHAAM, the research center, it's called the Research Center for now, I think will provoke us to rethink and revise a lot of our perspectives on cultural migration, engagement, will contribute to scholarship in so many important ways. And in fact, I think some of the findings here will help to lend a new historical depth to what globalization means. And take it back not just to the early modern, which is where I've typically been happy tracing it back, but to many thousands of years ago. And I think that's all for the good. Finally, we also talk a lot at Harvard about faculty-led research. So as vice provost, I meet often with representatives from other universities or foreign governments interested in forming some kind of a partnership with Harvard. Some come even armed with MOUs ready for me to sign on the spot. And as gracefully and diplomatically as I'm able, I say, thank you so much. Go find yourself a faculty member to work with, please, and then come back and talk to me. Because we don't sign agreements that are not championed by professors. We don't believe that they have any chance of success, even if they might look nice on paper. And we only put our name on things where we know that the faculty are really determined to put in the kind of energy and time and dedication to bring their students in, colleagues from across the university, to really make it work. That's the only way that things happen, we think, here. And it so happens that this is also a fundamental core principle of the Max Planck Institute, where person-centered research organization has been the driving force for decades. So I think that the fact that we are totally on the same page here as far as how research happens and the crucial dimension of faculty engagement and leadership is one in which there's total agreement, means that there is going to be a lot of exciting work coming out of this research center in the coming years. I personally am very much looking forward to it, and I wish you every success today, tomorrow, in your final discussions, and in the months and years to come. Congratulations again, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's lovely. Thank you, Mark. I would like to invite Dr. Malcolm Weiner, our friend, advisor, my personal tutor on occasion in matters of the Bronze Age, to offer some thoughts as we go forward on this happy occasion.
It's a great honor and pleasure to take part in this splendid introductory conference of the collaboration between the Max Planck Institute and Harvard. About a year ago, I was asked by the editors of Daedalus, the journal of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, of which I have the honor to be a fellow, if I could provide for an issue on the current state of the study of antiquity, one brief page on the scientific aspects, and they urged me to be brief. So rather than reinvent the wheel, I'll simply read a paragraph from what I said then. Sudden dramatic breakthroughs in archaeological science, intertwined with new approaches to the understanding of classical texts and depictions in various media, promise major new insights into both the physical realities and the mentalities of the classical world. DNA analysis of humans, animals, and pathogens, strontium isotope analysis of movements of individuals over the course of their lives, source analysis of clays and metals, plus technical studies of the chain operatoire of pottery manufacture, establishing whether the inspiration, the pot, or the potter moved, illustrate rapid advances of archaeological science. A recent DNA study of a corpse from the time of Justinian revealed a pathogen of the same strain of bubonic plague as that which ravaged Europe from AD 1347 to 1351 in particular. Holistic analysis of the 430 to 426 BC burials in the Kerameikos of Athens during the Great Plague, including DNA and strontium isotope analysis, pathological and histological analysis, dietary patterns and dental microwear studies, plus calculus, biomolecular, and biodistance analysis, will add much new information, which, while new approaches to the study of texts and funerary rituals will shed light on how the survivors in classical Athens understood and reacted to the disaster. Understanding how societies respond to catastrophes is as relevant to our likely future as to our comprehension of ages past. The study of 1,500 skeletons from the rescue excavation of the recently discovered cemetery in the Deme of Phaleron in Athens, covering the period from 750 to 470 BC, some with hands bound and showing evidence of torture before death, and all killed by blows on the back of the head, combined with the study of pottery and other objects buried with the bodies, will provide a vast amount of new information about the history of Athens, including the identity, behavior, and beliefs of its inhabitants. I perhaps should mention that my own recent work has included two papers, first on the collapse of civilizations between 2300 and 2000 BC, and then another one concerning the collapse at the end of the Bronze Age. They deal, among other matters, with climate change, famine, plague, and the migration of peoples. Of course, scientific evidence is critical, and DNA evidence with regard to migration of peoples most critical. So it's a great pleasure for me to be at this splendid conference and to see many old friends.